So you're once more welcome to our DOM manipulation class for week 6. Again, my name is Amadi Chile, and in this class you're going to learn what is DOM manipulation. So what do we hope to find for our Saturday's class? So we are going to learn the following: what is DOM, how to select HTML elements, DOM navigation, getting and changing HTML text, adding and changing attribute value, adding CSS, create, replace and removing elements, adding event listeners, classes, how to use date object, how to use set timeout and set interval, promises. So those are the things that we'll learn for Saturday's class. So let's begin with what is DOM. Now the HTML DOM is a standard object model and programming interface for HTML. It defines the property of all HTML elements, the HTML element as objects, the methods to access all HTML elements, the event for all HTML elements. So when we write our HTML like this, that means there is a JavaScript copy of it called DOM. So that is what that means. So in the DOM, all HTML elements are defined as objects. An object can have properties and methods. So a property is a value that you can get or set, like changing the content of an HTML element. The method is an action you can do, like adding or deleting an HTML element. So remember, we learned this in our last class. We learned that a method is a function that is inside an object or a class. So we learned about object properties, so you can get and you can set object properties. So the document object represents your web page. So in this application now, we just have only one HTML. So the DOM for this is only for the HTML. If there's another page here, it will have the DOM for this HTML and for the other one. So as many HTML page that exist here, they will have their own individual DOM. So if you want to access any element in an HTML page, you always start with accessing the document object. So remember, the DOM means document object model. So as has been explained, once you write your HTML, there is a document object for that particular page. So this diagram helps us to understand actually what DOM is. So remember, from what has been explained in the previous slide, whatever we write on our HTML page is saved in JavaScript as an object with the object name DOM. So I know that from our HTML page, the parent element is the HTML. So you see, it wraps the entire web page. Then inside the HTML tag, we have two important children or child tag, the head tag and the body tag, and that is what is represented here. So we have the root HTML, then we have the head element and the body element. So inside the head element, you have a main element called the title, and this is the text which is my text. So there are so many other elements in the head, but this is just an example. Then inside the body element you can have a h1 and an anchor element. So inside the element, inside the anchor element, you can have the href attribute and the text inside the h tag element. So that also goes for the h1 element. It has only a text element. Now by default h1 does not come with any attributes, so that is why there are no attributes, but you can still add them just as we've learned. So this is just a pictorial illustration of what the DOM is. We'll come back to this later on. So how to select HTML element. Now at the end of this DOM class for week 6, we should be able to interact with our HTML. Now remember from our last week, week 5, we learned JavaScript fundamentals, variable declaration, object function, if statement, loops, and other stuff. So now we are learning done, which means we can now interact, add more interactivity that we normally will not be able to do using HTML and CSS. So just to show you a sample of what we can do after this week, after this week's class, let me show you this app. So this is a to-do app that we'll be using. So you see how it's functional. So we can add the dark mode. Now notice that the text here changed to light mode, dark thing, just like that. Then you notice that there's a date here showing us the actual date, which is August 9, 2024. So we'll learn about all these things by the time we finish. Now you notice a notification or a modal. So each time I carry out an event, so you see it pops up. So we'll learn how to create this using JavaScript. Then I can delete a task, although this is a fake delete because once I refresh the page it comes, but it just gives you an idea of what you will do if you're doing the actual delete, which is coming from a database. So then I can add a task here. So I can add swim today. So I can use this one, add tags. So you see new tags added successfully, and you see swim today. So I can delete, so tags deleted. Then I can also delete this one I just added now, you see. Then I can also search. So let's say study for exam. So I can hit enter. So let's say I want to search now. So notice if I type here study, so I see only this one I just added. If I add do, so I only have this one. If I have W3 school, so you see I have this. So we're going to learn how to do all of this by the time we know how to interact with our DOM. So this is just a sample of what we'll do, and this will help us to actually do your assignment. Now I won't give you assignment with respect to this, but I will make this UI available so you can use it to practice to do your assignment, which will be 2 parts. So you have a Figma link to design, then you also need to add interactivity using what we learn here, DOM. So let's begin. So in order for us to begin, I'll come here, I'll go to the to-do.js. You see that there are so many JavaScript there, up to 180 87. So what I'm going to do is Ctrl A and backspace. So we have everything from fresh. So we are going to learn about the basics first. So now if you notice, those functionalities are gone. So we'll first of all learn how to interact with our DOM, learn the basics of DOM, then we are going to activate all of this. So let's continue with our slide. How to select HTML elements. Now there are three ways we can do that using the get element by ID, the query selector, and the query selector. So let's do that. So again, I'll open my inspect mode because we need to test our codes. So let's do that. So then let's move. So the first thing we want to learn is selecting tags or elements. So the first we want to look at is by ID. So to do that, the syntax for that, of course, when you want to select an element, you make sure you save it inside a variable so that you can reference that tag again if you want to. So the syntax is you save it inside a variable. Of course, you have to use let or any of the variable declaration keywords. Then your variable name, then equal to document, then the type of action. So the property of the document you want to access. Then if it is a method, of course you have to invoke it. Then some arguments. So by this you have saved whatever property that is inside the DOM inside your variable, so you can reference that. So let's do that now. So I'll say let. So if you go to the HTML page, so let me drag this here, move this. Okay, so if I come to this point now, so we want to get element by ID. So if I come to the body, so let's go down to see if we see an ID. So there is no ID, so you're going to add one for ourselves. So let's add on for us by ourselves. So add ID, call it body. So let's get this. So I'll add here body by ID should be equal to document. So remember the template here. So document dot get element by ID. Remember that's the first method you are learning. Then in quotes I add my argument, which is what? Body. Now why am I adding body? Because the value of the ID here is body. So remember in our CSS, to reference an ID you need the hash stuff, but before it something like this, but we don't need that here. Why? Because the method is already get element by ID, so it's expecting an ID value here. So if it doesn't find any valid ID that matches this, it will return none or undefined. So let's test it. Consider log body by ID. So if we do that, I'll come back to here. I'm going to see this. So you see, you notice when I hover, is actually showing me this. Now before we came to this point, if you notice this element, yeah, you notice this is the actual DOM but in the JavaScript format. So that is actually what we are able to do now using the JavaScript. So you see, so a similar effect. So excuse me. So the next one is the query selector. So let's select an element using the query selector. So I'll come here by query selector. So to do that, I'll say let body by q. So I'll not spell that full. So equal to document dot, remember the property name, which is query selector. Then if it's a method, you have to invoke that. Now remember, in this first method of get element by id, we didn't have to reference it the way we normally do in our CSS. But when you're using query selector or query selector, or you just have to remember that the way you select in your normal CSS, internal and external, that is the way you also select here. So I'm going to put here body. Now why am I putting the body here? Because I'm selecting now by tag name. So excuse me. So if I do the same thing, console.log body by q by the query selector, I will have this. So let's come back. So you still see the same result. So I can also select by ID. So I'll put my hash here. So you see, no change, which is nice. So I think it would be best for us if I split the screen once more. So I'm going to click here, come to the bottom, then minimize this, then move this. Since we are not doing anything that has to do with responsiveness, so we can compress our screen. So excuse me. Okay, nice. So I can close this to give us some room. So that is for that. So let's do one more example. So if I want to get this nav, so I can do the same thing. So I'll use this one by tag name. So let me get my nav. So let nav be equal to document dot query selector, then dot nav. So I'll come down here to console.log nav. So if I do that, I'm going to see now on my console the nav. So just that. So you notice when I hover, so let me bring this down a little. So you notice when I hover over this, I see the nav, which is nice. So that is how you can select. Now let's move to the query selector, or the query selector query. So it's put by query selector. Or so one limitation of the query selector is, even though there are many class or tags that matches what we put in as our argument is only going to fetch the first one. So let's do that. So let's say I want to get all the li in this my OL. So what I'm going to do there is this. So I'm going to come to my JS. So I put let all li be equal to document dot query selector. So what I'm going to do here is dot space dot tags li. So remember, from the HTML we have task class, then inside this I want to select all my li. Remember, this is the descendant selector. So if I do that, I'll do my console.log or li. So notice what I will see. I will only see the first one, which is this. So if I scroll, I hover, you see, you notice it's only this one, but these other ones are not showing. So that is just the limitation. So in order to solve this problem, instead of using query selector, we'll now add all. So if I do that and save, you notice what I have now is a node list. Now a node list is like an array, but it's not an array. So what is a node? So if I go back to my slide, back to the previous one, now you notice in this document object diagram representation, you notice that we have the document. So we have elements, we have the head, we have the body, we have, so all this is, they're just elements and text. So a node represents each of these boxes. So we have the element node, we have the attribute node, we have the text node. So all of these boxes, they are different nodes. So that is what a node is. And a node list now is just a list of the elements that match our selector or our target, which is all the li. So this is just a node list. So how do we make this node list become useful to us just like this? Because by the time we start to add maybe the color or text, we can't work with this. So this is like you are looking for an item, somebody tells you the item is inside here but the key is locked. So if it's in a glass, you'll be able to see the item but you can't access the item. So that is how this node list looks like. So remember, in our last class we learned about some higher array methods and some primitive loops. So the only higher array method that we can use to easily get the items is for loop. So let's do that. So I'll now come here or li dot for each, rather not the for loop, is it for each. So I have li, then my arrow function. So I can bring this to console.log li. So remember, I learned this in our last class, so in case you've forgotten, you can revisit the video. So but this is just the syntax of the for each. So by the time we make that loop, so I have to refresh. So you notice I have the three lists. So this is the first list, the second list, the third one, then lastly I have my node list, which is this. So you notice with this now we have gotten the same result just like the other two methods. So this is how we select element using JavaScript. Now if you need to select any element, my own preference is I use the query selector, since it can also do the job of the get element by ID. But if you must select an ID, you can decide to not use the get element by ID. But if you want to target more than one element, you want to select all of them all at a time, then that is when you need the query selector. So next we move to next one, which is DOM navigation. So with the HTML DOM, you can navigate the node tree using node relationship. Remember earlier I showed you what a node is. We have the element node, we have the text node. So DOM nodes, according to W3 School HTML DOM standard, everything in an HTML document is a node. So the entire document is a document node. Every HTML element is an element node. The text inside HTML element are text node. Every HTML attribute is attribute node, but this is depreciated, means it is no longer accepted. All comments are comments node. So that is what a node is. You can use the following node relationship or properties to navigate between element node with JavaScript. So let's now begin. But before we begin, let me explain something. So why do we need to use this DOM navigation? Why is it very, very important? Now, selecting an element from the DOM is like, you see the list of all this text here. So let's say this is our HTML and I want to select this slide text. So I'll just target the slide and select that. Now if at some point I need to also select the slideshow, so instead of retargeting everything from the beginning, I can just easily stretch my hand, say the next element. So I'll get this. Then if I'm here, I want to get the previous element, so I'll say the previous element sibling. So what about the first child? So in this context, so let's assume this is a div in our HTML DOM, and you notice this will be the first child. Or let me use another illustration again. So now the first child, if you notice here, we have inside this nav div here, we have the first child is the h1, the last child is this. So the first child, so once you target a parent, which is like the nav, so to get the first child, which is the h1, I can use the first element child. To get the last one, which is the button, which is this one, I can use the last child. So you see, once I target an element, any other element that is related to it, I can get that easily with just a property by using the DOM navigation. So if I target any of this, the h1 and the button tag, once I do the parent element, it will refer me to this. And you see how we apply this when we are activating our to-do list. So we are learning the fundamentals first again of the DOM before we start applying them to activate the functionalities I showed you earlier. So that is the reason why the DOM is very, very important. It makes us not to repeat the targeting all over again and save some valuable time. So let's get started with the first one. So the first one is the parent element. So again, let me target this h1, So unfortunately for us, there are two H1 here, so that was a typo error. So let me change this to H2. So what I'm going to do now is, you notice the styling has changed, so we can leave it at that. So let's see how it looks like, but only it's not at the center. But if we must send it to the center, what we can do is come back here, go to your CSS, then scroll down, look for tax H1, so and change it to H2. So that's all. So if we do that, you see it's now at the center. So that is it for that. So now let's target that H1. So I'll come here, I'll put so what we are actually learning now is DOM navigation or DOM transversal. So I hope I got that spelling right. So the next thing, so let's target the H1. So let nav H1 be equal to document that looks like an import. Okay, it's not an import. So document dot query selector. So remember, it's a nav H1, so we have dot nav, then H1. So again, to be sure we have that, so we have our nav H1. So excuse me. So if I do this now, I'm going to see the nav H1, which is to-do list, and that is what is here. So if I go to the top, I see the to-do list. Now let's get the parent element. So normally if I want to get a parent element, I'll just look at, oh, this is the nav tag, and we will now repeat whatever we did here before, which is the whole of this. But now using DOM transversal, notice how I can get that. So I can come here and do my dot parent element. So if I save that, so instead of getting me the nav H1, it's going to get me the parent, which is this. So you see, it's nice. Then so let me save this in a new variable. So let H1 parent be equal to nav H1 dot parent what element. So that is that. Then if I want to get the next one, which is first element child, so what is the first element child of this? So let nav H1 first element. So let's save it like this. So what I will just do is H element H1 parent dot first element child. So if I do that, of course that will give me back my what, my H1. So if I do that to give me back my H1, which is H1 parent first element, so that will give me back my H1, which is this. Then if I want to get the last child, so h1, so last element, so h1, then I will now use the last element child. So if I do that, h1 last parent element, I will get the button tag, which is the dark theme, which is exactly what we have on the DOM. Then the next two is the next element sibling and the previous element sibling. So to do that, what I need to do is this. I'll come back to my JS. So remember from what I told you before, if I'm here, because there's a next element, I'll use my next element sibling. But if I'm here, because there is no other tab here, so I'm going to use previous element sibling, because if I do the next element sibling, it will return undefined. So if I've targeted the nav h1 to get h2, so let me do that again. So let's nav, try to give them meaningful names. So let nav h1 next element should be, so nav h1 dot next element sibling. So if I do that, I'll get this here. So now h1 next element, so that will give me my button tag, again the dark mode. Very nice. So now the last one, so this is the DOM transversal. So I'm not going to use the nav h1 element. Okay, let's make this nav h1 last element previous. That is, so nav h1 next element. So let's use nav button, let's use a convention button previous element. So remember that the nav h1 previous element will be the button, which is nav h1 next element, which is giving us the button. Then with this, now we can now work with the previous element. So nav h1 next element, then dot previous element sibling. So if I do that and come back here, so now button previous element, you see I'll get back my h1, which is this. So the sole purpose of knowing this DOM or DOM relationship is, you see how from what we did here, there is no document dot query selector again. So I'm just using their DOM relationship based on how they relate on the document object model. So normally if we can still target all these elements separately by using this method, but the sole purpose of this part of this slide is to tell you how to show you how to use this DOM relationship. So you see that we've used all of them. We've used the parent element, the first element child, the last element child, the next element sibling, and the previous element sibling. So with this we can easily avoid typing this long stuff. So you notice from here, from this nav h1, you're able to get the parent element easily, the first element child, just like that. So once you can remember the DOM relationship, you can actually know when you will use each of them and you not have an error, and it's actually work. Okay, so that is it for that. So let's move to the next one, which is getting and setting HTML text. So let's move that. So to do that, we need to use the following DOM properties, which is the text content, the inner HTML, the inner text. So in a little while you are going to see the differences. So I'll come back here, getting and setting text. So remember, we've already targeted our nav h1 or our body tag, so or our nav tag. So let's see how we can get the text. So to get the text, what I will do here is to come to my JS. So I'm going to use my console.log. So remember the syntax here is, sorry, I did not write the syntax for this. So the syntax for this is, you have your variable name, then you have your dot what DOM relationship. So now the DOM relationship now is either the parent element, the first element child, and that. So in getting and setting an element, the syntax is this: you have your variable name, we have the variable name, then inside that they will now do our dot get text, or just use the text property. So that is it. So if we want to get our text, we use that. Then if we want to set our text, we just need to add assignment operator and a value. So that is it. So let's do the first one, to get a text. So to get a text, we use let's consider the log. We already have the nav selected dot the text content. So if we do that for the text content, if I save now, notice wrong save, it should be here. So notice I'm going to get the text content inside my nav zone, which is the to do list and the dark mode. So for the same thing, if I use my inner HTML, so you notice I have this. So it is giving me the HTML inside the nav, which is expected because inside the nav div I have this, and that is what is showing me. So it's just getting both the text and the HTML that is showing the text. So if there's no HTML, to just get to the text. So we'll move to the next one, which is the inner text. So inner text. So if I do this, I'll have this. So you notice for the text content, it gets us the text, but it tries to position it the way it appears on the DOM. So you see that extra spacing. Then for the inner HTML, it gets the HTML, but if there's no HTML, it will get to the text. But for the inner text, it gets you the text just like the text content, but there is no extra spacing. So because of this behavior, since if your goal is to get just the text and not the HTML part of it, even though it might contain it, you just use the text content or the inner text. But using this one might not be good unless the application you're building demands it. Okay, so that's how we get the text. Then how do we set the text? So let's say I want to get the nav. So we already have the nav h1. Then to set the text, I'll do dot text content. Remember, this is to get, but to set you add the assignment operator, and I put new text, something like that. So if I save now, you notice the text here has been changed. So if I don't want it to change like that, remember my compound operator, so I'll just add a space here, so to show me to do list new text. So this is how we can get and set a text. So I'm going to comment that out for now, so it will remain. So you see us using all of this in a short while. So the next one is adding and changing attribute value. So to do that, we use the set attribute. So remember that class and ID, they are all what? Attribute. So setting attribute. So to do that, the syntax for this is your variable name. Of course, this variable name, you know, is holding your DOM which you have selected. Dot set attribute. Then it has two parameters, or I mean 2 arguments. So the first one is the what? Is the attribute name. Then this one is the attribute value. Is the value. So remember, in our HTML, we have this ID is an attribute, but the value is body. This rel is an attribute, the value is style sheet. This href is an attribute, and the value is a path to our CSS. So that is how that one looks like. So we can use it to get, to set or update the attribute. So let me say I want to change, according to the CSS here, I have in my nav it is a small letter n. So let me change it to a capital letter N. So I'll use nav.set attribute, then class, then the value will be nav. So if I do that, you notice that because I've changed that using JavaScript, the nav section is not properly styled again. So because it's now seeing capital letter N instead of small letter n, but if I leave it the way it was nav, notice it comes back. So that is nice. So I can also add more distance. So I can add nav here. So notice if I save, I'm trying to inspect my nav, you notice that I now have two, which is the normal nav and this one. So because this normal one exists, which the CSS knows, that is why it's appearing like this. So again, we can also set attributes. So remember, I can come here and add a title attribute, to do web app. So if I do this, notice what happens when I hover. It shows me that to do what web app. So I can add this. So let me comment this out, or let me clean that. I can add this using my JavaScript. So to do that, I'll target my h1. So my nav h1 dot set attribute. So again, remember the attribute name is title. Then here I'm going to put to do web app. So if I do this, I hover again, so notice it's still there. So that is how you can set. Now using the set attribute, we can set both class ID and any other attribute, but you have to do them one after the other. So that is how we use the set attribute. Then the next one is adding CSS. So with adding CSS, there are three ways we can do that. We have the inline CSS using the style. We have the internal using the style.css text. Then the external using add and remove class or set attribute. So let's learn how to add CSS using JavaScript. So to do that, I'll come to my to-do.js, then adding CSS. So the first one is the inline. So to do that, remember we've already targeted our h1. So let me change the text from blue to red. So remember, so I'll just do my nav h1. So now the syntax for the inline CSS is this. You have your variable name dot style dot CSS property, then equal to the value. So for instance, so let me change this to a multi-line comment. I have to manually do that. So bring back this and slash. So remember that in our CSS, I can have something like this. Color equal to red, right? So the CSS property here is what? Is color, the value is red. And with JavaScript, you know, minus is a keyword. So for font size, something like this, I'll write in my CSS maybe 8 pixel. In my JavaScript, I'm going to write it like this: font size, then it should be equal to 8 pixel, now in quote. So you see, so that is just the difference. So when we say this our property name, we are referring to this. So with this, let's now try it. So the nav h1 dot style, that's not the spell style, and IntelliSense, you're doing your job. Style dot, no, that's not what I want. Style dot color now is equal to quote red. So if I save that, you notice the to do has changed to what? Red. Then let's say I want to change the background color of the to do app. So I'm going to put nav.style dot background color should be equal to black. So remember, in CSS this will be background hyphen color, but remember this here we change it to a camel case because minus is a keyword. So if we do that, I'll have this. So that is how we can add the color. So let's say I also want to add a border here. So notice I can have my border, then 2 pixel solid white. So if I do that, I'm going to have that border of white there. So you see, now this is inline because you see that if I want to add more than one CSS, I need to be coming to a new line. And besides, if you inspect this, you notice it's adding it using the style tag because we are using the style here. So that's why it's also inline. And the next one is our internal. So in our internal, instead of us to do this, I can now write it in just the way I'll write in my internal or external CSS. So to do that same thing, I'll have nav.style dot css text, then equal to, I can now use my backtick, so because I want to go to the new line. Then I can now put my color, I can put my background, this time I can use my hyphen color, should be what? Black. Then my border should be 2 pixel solid white. So if you notice, before I do this, so let me comment this out. If I save, because this is already out, it will remain this. But now if I comment this out and save again, you notice it's back. And if you inspect, so let's refresh again. So you notice it's still added like this, but this is normally how we write our internal CSS in our HTML file. See, we can group them all at once, and that will do. So that is for the internal. Then let's look at the external. Now this external method means that I already have a CSS prepared, but I have not applied it anywhere. So what I'm going to do here now is I'm going to comment this out. Now remember, when we are adding our attribute here, we gave it a class of nav, a capital N. So this is not applied anywhere, so let me remove this now. So but let me come to my CSS and I will give it so dot nav. So let me just copy those CSS to save myself of some typing. So I'll comment that first, do my Ctrl+C, then I'll comment. So if I come back here and I paste this, I'll have that, right? But you see, it's not applied anywhere because I'm neither using HTML or JavaScript to apply it. But if I apply it here again, so now notice that will come back. So you see, but now let me use, so this is the first method by using what the set attribute. That is what I just did now. So not that. Okay, so by adding it to this set attribute, that is what we've done. But I can do this at the bottom again. So let me come back here. So I can use nav dot set attribute. So I have my class. Then notice what happens if I put nav. So notice the other CSS will be lost. So you notice I still have the background color, the border, and this, but this other one is lost unless I indicate that by doing this. So this is actually one of the limitations of using the set attribute, because it's like it cleans whatever attribute you have there unless you want to manually include it. So that is how we can add that. Now the other method we can use is using the class list. So nav dot class list dot add. So what I will now add now is nav. So if I do that, so you notice it's still there. But before I do this, let me save. You notice it's not there. So but if I add this now, you notice it's there. So you see that using the class list dot add does not wipe out the previous class, but rather it adds to it. So if I want to remove a class, I can just remove it. So if I remove the normal one that was there, which is the small letter n, notice this other background style will be lost. So that is not add, it's remove. So that will remove the CSS here. So that is how we can add CSS. So is either you use the inline styling, is either use the internal, which is like this, or is either use the what, the external, any of this method. So you see me using this method as we build the project. So the next one I want to do is create, replace and removing what element. So let's learn how to create and move element. So let's say that we want to create this list element. So we have, it has a class of li, it has two span tag 1 and 2. So let's create it exactly the way it is, then we'll add it to the DOM, because when we create an element, we don't just create in our JavaScript and leave it there. We need to add it to the DOM. So let's do exactly what is here. So remember, first of all, we'll create one li and two span tags. So let's do that. So what we are learning now is creating, removing and replacing element. So let's do the first one, which is creating. So to do that, the syntax for this is still the same. So you put your you want to declare a variable. So let maybe a p tag be equal to document dot create element then here you put your tag name. So it must be a valid tag name. So if I put p here, it's going to create a p tag. If I put h, it's going to put the h1, it's going to create the h1 tag. So let's do that. So let li be equal to document dot query selector. No, not query selector. Not targeting, you're creating. So document dot create element. So you select it. Then I'll put my li. So let me also create the span tags 1, 2, shift alt arrow down. So this will be span 1, this will be span, then this one will be span 2, and this will also be what? Span. So to just make a quick test, if I do a consider log li, I'll notice I have my li showing here. So you notice it's empty. So you also notice I can add text to it. So let me add text to this. So the first one is add text. Next, after you create the element, you add text. So to add text, my span 1 dot, I'll add the text. So text content should be equal to new task. Then my span 2 dot text content, the text that is there by default is what? Is delete. So let's add that, delete. Then the next one is set attribute. So let's examine. Now remember, if we come here, the first span tag has a class of task, so we have to do that. The second one has a class of what? Of delete. Then the li also has a class of li. So let's add those. So I'll have li dot set attribute, use class, then I'll use li. So shift alt arrow down. So this one will be my span 1, and the attribute there is task. This other one span 2, and the attribute there is what? Is delete. So that is exactly what we have here. So we've added that. So the next thing you want to do is to rearrange arrange. So in rearranging, we want to make sure that the span tag that would add first, or that will remain first, is the one that holds the task. Then while the second one is the delete. So to rearrange, you can either use append or prepend. Now this append is like push in array, so it will always add from the bottom, so that the first one you add will always remain first. Then this prepend is like adding from the front, which is like on shift, so you just be adding to the front. So let's use our append. So li dot append. So I'm going to append my span 1 first, then do the same thing. I'll add my span 2. So notice I've done that. So if I save this now, notice that our our li tag here will be updated. So notice it's now updated. It has a class of li. The first one has a class of tags and delete, just exactly what we saw here. So now, lastly, what we'll do now is to add to the DOM. Add to DOM. So in order to add to DOM, again, we are going to use the append or prepend. But since we've used the append, which is adding from the bottom, let's use the prepend there, which means the tags will be added on top instead of at the bottom. So to do that, we need to target the parent. So select the parent, for which we want to add to the DOM. So to do that, remember that we want to add this to this like the tags, because we created the li just to look like this. So because we added the right classes, by the time we add it, it's going to be styled automatically like this. So you are going to get the tags OL. So let's get that. So let task OL be equal to document dot query selector. Then we have our space dot tasks space OL. So in order for us not to work like blind men, let's do our console.log tasks OL. So if I do that, I'm going to have this. So let's see. So notice I'm getting it the OL. So now that we've got it, so let's add it now. So tags OL dot prepend. So see prepend is there. Then we now use our li. So that means you see new task at the top. So you see new task is now at the top, and it's styled exactly the way other ones are styled. Nice. So that is how we create a task, an element, and add it to the DOM. So all these steps. So you create the element, you add text, you add attributes, you rearrange. Then if you've not selected the parent element for which you want to add to DOM, you select it, then you add to DOM. So the next thing we want to learn now is the replacing a child. Now I notice here from this DOM here we have this OL. So let's target the first child. So the first child I will target, we want to replace this span tag. So instead of it to be a span tag, let it be an anchor tag. So let's do that. So we're not only changing the text, which is what we can do is just to select this and give it what, and set the text, but you're also changing the element. So to do that, according to what we have on our slide, we need to create a new element node. Then that's what we'll add here. Then we'll add the text to it. Then the parent element I want to add to, then we can do that here. So first of all, let's now select this li. So what I'm going to do, I can give this a class of one. So this is our tax 1. So we have our tax 2, then we have our tax 3. So something like that. Or we can use li1. So we can use any of that. So let me add it to, so we can have li3. So here will be my li2. Now why am I not adding to this one? Because in my CSS I don't know if I use this to style, so there's no need to clean that, just to add a new one, li1. So let's target li1 and let's use that to replace this first tax here with what? With an attribute, with an anchor tag instead of this. So let's do that. So replacing so let me make this blue. Or to do, so replacing element. So to replace an element, what I need to do is to create an element first. So I'll select new node be equal to document dot query selector dot create element so create element. I want to create my anchor tag. Then after that I want to add text and my attribute, so add text. So I'm going to add new node dot the text content should be equal to maybe visit a doctor. The next thing I want to set my attribute, set attribute. So remember the anchor tag used to have the href attribute. So new node dot set attribute. So I'm going to have it as href. Then for now it should go nowhere. Then the last thing now is we want to replace. So to do that I need to also target the one I want to replace, which is let li1 be equal to document dot query selector. So I put dot li1. So just to be sure we are not working like blind men, so let me do a console.log li1. So if I save, open my browser, I'll see that we have this li1. Nice. So to do that, so now to replace, I'll use li1 dot replace child. So the first argument there is the node. So you can see from the IntelliSense is the node, then the child node. So the node is new node, then li1 dot children or child nodes, then my square bracket I'll put 1. So if I do that, it's going to replace this one with what? Visit a doctor. Now if I click on this, it goes nowhere. Now I can change this to be a button. So instead of showing it like this, it's going to show like a button. I can change this to be an input. So to change to an input where I can type something. So you see how it is. I can change it. So if I change it to an input, I can change the type here to date. So let's see what that will look like. So to come like this, so I can choose my date. So you see, using JavaScript, I can change this to be a file, not a file, still input. I can change this to be a file. So I can now select my file. So if I click on this, it's going to show me something like this. So there are so many things you can do here. So you can so many things that you can change. So you can create different any elements at all. You can create that using JavaScript. So is it a check box? So you can also do that. So to come as a checkbox that you can click. So let's leave it at as the first, which is our anchor tag, our href, and make this go nowhere. So if I save that, I see this visit a doctor. So that's how we replace a child. Then the last one is removing. So removing. So to remove a child, so let's say I want to get my L2. So I change this to L2 and I change this to L2. Now we don't need to test that will work, but if you are not sure, you always test. So the syntax is this. So of course I didn't write the syntax for this, so let me do that. You do your variable name dot replace child. So you have your new node, then you have your variable name dot child add nodes, then you put the position. So like this is 1 and this is 2. So if I want this to replace the second one, instead of the tags, I'll just put 2. So it's going to replace this here. So see, this is 2. So if I do the next one, which is 3, so let's see if it's going to replace the button. So you see it has replaced the button. And why did it come here? So let's see if we have a third element there. So I'm not sure we have a third element, but that is how it's working. Okay, so for the same reason, if I put 0, it will come as the first. So just put 1. Okay, so to delete a child, you just put your variable name, remove, and that is it. So if I want to remove my L2 now, is my L2, which is my variable name, dot remove. Now remember, the L2 is holding do assignment. So if I save this now, you no longer see your do assignment. So you see it's off. Is what is off. So this is how we can create, replace, and remove child. So the last one I want to learn is, before we start activating, is this. For this part of this video is adding event listeners. So by the time I add this event listeners, then what we'll now do is to start activating this in the second part of the video. Then the third part of the video, we'll learn some other stuff like the classes and other stuff. Then we'll now begin to now see how we can add some modals and other stuff. So let's begin. So how to add event listener. So this one will not take us time. So there are two ways you can add event listeners. So the first way is using the HTML element. The second way is using the DOM element. So let's look at the first one, the HTML element. So I will come here. So for this, I'm going to add an event listener called on click. So I'm going to put handle click. Then I'm going to call the function. So if I save, I come to, let me this come. I go to my browser. Then so I'm going to put here DOM HTML event. So if I come here and put the name of that function, which is function, so remember I'm going to create function before, handle click, then I put alert you clicked me. So if I save that, so if I come and click the first one, which is visit a doctor, you see an alert. You do what? You clicked me. But if I click on this one, you see it's not there. So that is for that. So I can have so many event listeners. So I can have mouse enter. So the event listener is going to fire if the mouse enters the zone. So you see, we have a mouse leave, or mouse leave. So it's going to fire if the mouse enters and leaves the target. So you see, then we have, so you see, is, so we have on double click, on double click. So if I do that, you notice if I click once nothing happens, but if I double click 1, 2, so you see it happens. So there are so many event listeners. So we have on drag. So let's see if this will fire. So if I want to drag this, so you see it works. So if I attempt to drag anything from there, as long as it shows that draggable stuff that it can be dragged, so to fire. So let me refresh this. So I don't think that is working because this is not draggable. So if it was an image by default is draggable, so that will work. So there are so many event listeners, but let's just leave it as this. On click. Now, one of the disadvantages of using the HTML event that we don't have access to the event object, which can help us do many powerful things with our JavaScript. So just to show you that, so if I save this, I come to my this thing here, I put E here, then I put a console.log. E is going to show me undefined. So actually when I click, one, so I've not saved. So if I click this now, notice so what did I select? On click, handle click. So why is it not working? Let me refresh. Handle click. Okay, I think I didn't spell it well. On click, that should be capitalized. Let's see. Wow, this is quite strange. The first one. So is this one now? I think my live server is giving some issue. So let me open this again with a live server. So let me open this again. So let me click this. So you see it was a live server. Just added some unnecessary stress. So notice if I go to my console and I click this, it's going to show me undefined again. So because I'm not able to have access to that. But let's now add our event listener using the DOM event. So DOM event. So to do this, the syntax for this is, of course, you have your variable name. So variable name dot add event listener, then event type. So is it click, is it mouse in, is it mouse enter, then a function. So that is the function that will fire if the event occurs. So just like this, our on click. So let me add an event listener to the second list. So I'm bringing it back, which is this do assignment. So li2 dot add event listener. So you see I'm waiting. So the next one is our click, then the type of event, the function that will fire when this event occurs. So again, I like to use my anonymous function. So consider log DOM event. So if I save this, so if I click on this do assignment, so instead of an alert, so I'm getting the consider log. So I was expecting an alert. So that is it. So now if I do my consider log, my event object, so excuse me, once I click on here, so if I go down, I click here, you notice I have this pointer event. Now this shows a list of some things that I have access to when this event occurs. So I have access to the exact position of the pointer, the element phase, this, you see the target, the width. So there are so many things I have access to when I add an event using the DOM method of adding event. So the HTML event can be used for simple projects that is not complex, or where you don't need to actually work with the event object. But if you need to, you definitely have to use the DOM event. So because of the advantage, I'm going to use the DOM event in this or throughout this video. So what we want to do next now is we now know how to add event listeners. So we want to, in the next video, we are going to activate, we are going to activate all of this. So we are going to activate the dark mode. We're also going to activate the search, the delete, and the add tags. Then after that video, the next one we'll learn about classes, then how to use the date object, how to use set time at a set interval, then how to use promises. Then after that we will now see how we can apply all what we have learned to add the modal and other functionalities that we need to add. So that is it for this video. So I'll see you in the next video.